China's rapid economic growth over the past 3 decades has transformed the nation from its agricultural origins into a strong, modern economy. While not exceeding the U.S. economically, China stands as the sole global economy that genuinely rivals America's. However, this economic expansion has created a significant vulnerability, a heavy dependence on maritime trade routes for exporting goods and importing crucial resources like oil. For China to become a true peer competitor to the U.S., safeguarding its access to vital global shipping lanes is paramount. For many years, China prioritized national sovereignty, building a substantial ground force to counter potential threats from Japan or former Soviet adversaries. As China's economy grew, its reliance on maritime trade reached a critical level. While all nations depend on seaborne trade, China's economy relies on it for 60 to 80% of its imports and exports, and nearly all of its oil supply. This vulnerability to trade route disruptions has forced a shift in focus from land forces to a growing naval and air power. China's maritime strategic situation is both unique and disadvantageous. A significant portion of its oil imports transit the Indian Ocean, placing it within reach of India, another long-standing rival, which could easily disrupt or even halt Chinese shipping. Although China possesses a larger and more advanced navy than India, Indian vessels would benefit from land-based support and rapid resupply. China, conversely, would need to deploy a substantial battle group far into the Indian Ocean, capable of withstanding not only the Indian Navy, but also its land-based air force. Currently, this is strategically unfeasible for the limited Chinese Navy, lacking the necessary supply and logistics vessels for sustained operations at sea. A war with the U.S. would likely involve India as an American ally, but even without India's involvement, China would still face the formidable U.S. Pacific Fleet. With 2,000 aircraft and 200 ships, including 33 nuclear attack submarines, the U.S. Pacific Fleet alone surpasses China's entire navy, comprising 193 combat ships and 710 aircraft. In any conflict, the U.S. Pacific Fleet would receive rapid reinforcements from other American naval forces. Could China realistically repel the U.S. Pacific Fleet in a war? In 1996, following the U.S. granting a visa to Taiwan's president, Lee Teng-hui, China initiated large-scale military exercises near Taiwan. These exercises began with live-fire missile and artillery drills close to Taiwan's coast, followed by a publicized amphibious assault exercise, signaling China's readiness to invade the island. The U.S. responded by deploying 3 aircraft carrier battle groups and an amphibious assault ship to the region, the largest display of American military might in Asia since the Vietnam War. This confrontation forced China to acknowledge its inability to prevent the U.S. from defending Taiwan. Internally, Chinese military leaders questioned the possibility of defeating the U.S. Navy in any combat scenario. Humbled by the U.S. response, China restructured its military priorities, emphasizing its naval, missile, and air forces. 2 decades later, these efforts have yielded significant results. China now commands the world's largest ballistic missile force and a capable, albeit still limited, navy. However, China continues to grapple with internal issues, notably systemic corruption within the Communist Party leadership and the armed forces. Despite Xi Jinping's anti-corruption efforts, the long-term effects of corrupt leadership on China's military could take years to overcome. China also faces significant challenges in recruitment, training, and experience within its armed forces. Unable to meet recruitment targets, China's military has repeatedly lowered its standards since 2010. The resulting recruits have raised concerns about their capabilities. Chinese observers noted an incident in 2012 where a People's Liberation Army unit experienced such high stress levels during a 15-day war simulation that the exercise was paused for movie nights and karaoke parties. By the 9th day, a cultural performance troupe was brought in to entertain the homesick soldiers, whose morale had plummeted. Reports suggest this was not an isolated incident, and Chinese watchdogs have long noted the lack of comprehensive training in the Chinese military compared to Western counterparts. China's lack of confidence in its troops is evident in its reluctance to participate in UN peacekeeping missions until the early 2010s, fearing international embarrassment. Further complicating China's ability to wage war against a major power, is its lack of combat experience since a brief border conflict with Vietnam in 1979. The modern Chinese military lacks experience in modern combined arms warfare. Adding to these problems, China lacks a unified command structure across its military branches, unlike the US. This hinders coordination between ground, air, naval, and missile forces, impeding rapid response and defense in the fast-paced environment of modern warfare. Following the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis, China heavily invested in its missile forces, aiming to threaten American aircraft carriers from within the Chinese mainland. Maintaining the world's only missile service as an independent military branch underscores China's commitment to long-range standoff weapons. Despite claims that its new DF-21 carrier-killer ballistic missiles could deny the U.S. access to the West Pacific, the validity of these boasts remains questionable. A ballistic missile strike on a moving target at sea requires a complex kill chain involving land-based radar, airborne radar, satellites, and command and control nodes to track and target an enemy ship. To date, China has not demonstrated the ability to successfully execute every step in this complex process or protect these systems from attack or interference. Even optimistic American naval commanders acknowledge the threat posed by China's ballistic missiles to carrier battle groups. In response, the U.S. has embarked on its most ambitious ballistic missile defense program ever. This includes testing airborne and ship-based directed energy weapons like lasers, a new generation of the standard model anti-air missile, and classified anti-satellite weapon projects. The U.S. takes the Chinese ballistic missile threat very seriously. China's missile forces are its primary means of deterring the U.S. Navy, but their effectiveness remains uncertain. However, one often overlooked factor is the U.S. submarine force. Operating in secrecy, the U.S. Silent Service is the most advanced submarine force globally, maintaining a constant rotation of 18 submarines forward deployed in the Pacific, with another 8 in potential conflict zones. For the U.S. Navy in the Pacific, this means operating in Chinese coastal waters. Given China's limited anti-submarine capabilities and its notoriously noisy submarines, this underwater force alone could disrupt China's trade and neutralize its small amphibious assault fleet in the event of a Taiwan invasion. Immune to China's ballistic missiles, America's nuclear attack submarines are its most potent weapon in any conflict with China, a fact both nations recognize. In response, China has deployed underwater listening sensors across the South China Sea, while the U.S. has increased annual production of its Virginia-class submarines to 2 per year until at least 2030. China is not yet capable of defeating the U.S. Navy. However, it is actively addressing this weakness by expanding its Navy, constructing 2 aircraft carriers, and building new diesel-powered submarines. However, with a looming demographic crisis projected to result in over 65% of its population reaching retirement age by 2030, China may face economic constraints in sustaining its military expansion. The U.S. also faces challenges in maintaining its global naval presence. However, with its strong alliances and access to financial networks that China lacks, China would require significant and focused investment in its Navy, potentially at the expense of other military branches, to truly challenge America at sea.